Howdy y'all, I'm Ice Gold and Tame. It's that time of year again. Fall test drown with a new world time. So Wallaru is right around the corner, and I've got high expectations for it, especially since it will be the last world in the fourth arc. But afterward, Spark has said that there are plans to make a fifth arc. They will be taking their usual off year just to do whatever they want to do. Hopefully it's some quality of life stuff that happens next year, but after that, they are gonna get back on the saddle and make the fifth arc. So, the way I see it, there's a few things they could do for the fifth arc. But I do have one specific thing in mind for it, and you'll see what it is in a minute. But the main thing that I wanted to talk about here is that at the moment, the wizard is too strong. Becoming the Divine Paradox at the end of Imperia Part 2 was the height of our power, and we're just the adjacent to one of the three primal divine beings in the spiral, being Bartleby for us. And we haven't had a meaningful loss since Azteca, and we've never lost at the end of an arc. Because, in Malastare we won, we beat Morganth and Chrysalis, and then we stopped the conflict with Spider and Raven in Imperia. So we did win all three times, but losing to Dasein in Wallaru would humble us when we're already being looked at somewhat negatively, especially with the whole final dialogues in Conatus, where the Four Worlds representatives get mad at us for not being able to calm Dasein down. And it doesn't matter that the conflict is entirely on them. Public opinion is going to be very against the wizard, and a loss to Dasein and whatever he does would get everyone hating at us for failing at our biggest moment. And a good plot point that could come up is that the wizard just went with whatever they told him to do. Like, Maxine wanted Valencian fish, and so we said, okay, I'll talk to Dasein, and we did it. And that made the Valencians mad, so Mario DeMario had to, negotiate. But once he found out that, Dasein could just do stuff like that, he wanted an infinite supply of Valencian steel. But it came in the Banana Jungle, which was run by the Monquistans, so we had to mediate between Valencia and Monquista, because the Monquistans argued that since the Valencian steel was technically on their soil, it was theirs. But then the Valencians said, the steel is Valencian, so it's ours, rah, rah. That was a whole thing. It was one of my least favorite plot points of Novus. But the wizard just went along with that too. And with, the Marleybonians in New Vicorcia, they found out about, Dasein on their own. And, they'd probably heard about the stuff going on with the other three, but they found Dasein, and what they really wanted was, power and control over the world. So that's why you see all these Marleybonian flags all over the place, because they just sprung up because Governor Weiler just basically said, give us the land, it's ours, and Dasein was like, okay. And he did this after we helped him find the frame of mind that allowed him to speak to Dasein. This conflict, we did play a role in it, and I think that could be an interesting plot point. The wizard just never had the agency to talk them out of it, because all the wizard would have had to do is been like, free stuff might seem good on paper, but that throws the whole economy out of whack. And I'm not really expecting the wizard to know much about economics, but surely the basic idea of supply and demand isn't too foreign, even in this made-up world that's has all this happening. And an interesting part about Dasein is that he is this sort of mirror to us, where he is extremely powerful, but he does have the agency and integrity that the wizard lacks. At the end of Novus, he got tired of getting exploited, And then it's like all he wanted to do was help them. But when he helped them, they started fighting each other, which stressed him out and created the arcs and all that. So he became nothing again, and the nothing rejected the everything. And that's sort of where the story leaves off for Wallaru. Now, I don't know if Wallaru is going to hint at anything for the 5th arc, but I guess we'll see. But I'm just making this video now just to get ahead of it, because I know that they're going to probably hint at something. The main villain of the 5th arc needs to one-up Dasein, if Dasein ends up being like the villain, you know, because he is nothing. Qyburn mentioned, I think, in Lemuria or Novus, somewhere in one of those quest lines, that him manifesting should have canceled out reality, but he didn't. So maybe that's his goal now. It's like, if he thinks that there's no way for people to stop fighting, then like, why not just shut down existence, right? It's like, if people aren't ever going to be happy, then there's no point in letting them continue. So he might just make that executive decision for everybody, and that'll be rash and erratic, and that's why we're going to Wallaru to stop him. So in my honest opinion, the villain for the 5th arc needs to be the Wizard. We need to be vilified by everyone in the Spiral. Maybe bring back the whole shadow magic thing, because that was the whole thing in Arc 3. You know, people in Imperio were scared of us because we knew shadow magic. The whole Xanadu Sewers plotline had, like, the Sanabots attacking us because they detected shadow magic in us, so that was the whole thing. And, you know, taking a monumental loss at the end of Arc 4 would set that up perfectly. And to be honest, I'm not even sure who the next villain even could be at this point. Like, they would have to one-up the primal divine force of chaos and the literal antithesis of existence. And honestly, it was already crazy enough after Arc 3, because one of the characters responsible for the creation of the universe had to be one-upped, but now I feel like the curator is pushing it a little. So I'm interested to see what he comes up with next, but in my honest opinion, the Wizard is just so powerful, and, you know, we're the only ones that have beaten these main arc villains, and I think having a villain arc would be good for the game at this point. It would be a good plot for like a story perspective. So we'll see what they do. Now, there have been a few mentions of a powerful sounding Stargater. The first was some rando living in a fallout shelter in the drains, but he was concerned about the Spiral ending. And as we know, that was already covered back in Arc 2 with Morganth and the Cabal's little subplot in the 3rd arc. The second came with the new Wizard City questline. The new Foulgaze quest shows a dialogue with pre-Eye of History Bartleby mentioning the alligator eats the stars, in the same dialogue where he mentions the first, technically 3 arc villains. And to be honest, I'm not sure if eating the stars is going to have higher stakes than reality being canceled out, but, you know, they could make it mean something better, or something more dangerous, I guess. And then the third and final mention came from Mubu after you go to Kathmandu in the early Novus questline. But the way he mentions it just feels like it's not really all that dangerous, especially for us. He talks about fighting his way out of one, but that it lost its luster after the 3rd or 4th time, like it's just something he does regularly. So if this is the route they take, you know, they better make eating the stars mean something a hell of a lot more important. Because at the moment, it just sounds vaguely similar to the Everwinter plot in Grizzleheim. So it's like, you know, if the Stargater ate whatever is providing light out here, light and warmth, it's basically just the Everwinter again. And, you know, that's been played out, right? So, I don't know. We'll just have to see. But with that all being said, the Wizard becoming the villain in the 5th arc and just being, I guess, vilified for being hyped up to be this unbeatable force, the stakes might honestly just be a bit too high at this point. Because in the past, losing wouldn't have been irredeemable. If we lost to Alistair, he would have summoned the Dragon Titan and, ravaged Dragonspire even more than he already did. But he wouldn't have destroyed the Spiral. We could have gotten stronger in the background and beaten him a few worlds down the line. And, that would be a good comeback story. If he lost to Morganth, she would have made a new Spiral where she was considered to be in the right. But we could have done it right back with the help of Raven or something like that for a redemption arc. She would be doubting our motives because of the whole shadow magic thing, but Cobb might have even wanted to pitch in and help. I'm not really expecting it to be like that, but I don't know, maybe something about like ego, like Cobb would have been jealous that Morganth sort of stole his thunder about sowing chaos throughout the Spiral, but we could have still come back and beaten her. Morganth, that is. And then if we lost to Spider, he would have spread chaos throughout the Spiral, remade the first world and all that, but we could have beaten him later on and established order. Plus, there would have been some upsides to every world being part of the same again. And, that is all if he didn't have a change of heart upon getting close to his heart like he did in Imperia. Because that is what made him reconcile with Raven, and, they made up, locked themselves in the husk, and that was just sort of that. But if we lose to Dasein, and remember, Qyburn, the Arcanum's Astral Scholar, was extremely surprised that he was able to manifest without completely canceling out reality. Existence as we know it may just end, if that's what Dasein's goal ends up being, as a sort of revenge on the peoples of the Spiral for their greed shown here in Novus. And that's pretty damn permanent. And I think the writers realized this, so I'm not really expecting a big L on the Wizard's part in Wallaru, which does sort of suck, because now they need to come up with something that predates the Spiral and has some ability that's somehow stronger than being able to just turn off existence. So I think we're sort of past the point where the Wizard could reasonably lose and be able to come back from it. So that's just my take on it. But thank you all for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace out, y'all.